most people hear the name Iran, the first images that often come to mind are headlines about political tension, conflict, and uncertainty. For decades, international media has framed the country through a familiar lens, a place defined by instability somewhere in the Middle East. But that image captures only a small fragment of a much larger story. Behind the haze of modern geopolitics lies something far deeper. Iran is one of the oldest cradles of human civilization. What makes Iran remarkable is a striking paradox. Much of its landscape is made up of harsh mountains, dry plateaus, and vast deserts shaped by wind and stone. It is not a land blessed with wide, fertile rivers or endless green valleys. And yet, this seemingly unforgiving terrain became one of the most influential centers of history for thousands of years. Part of the answer can be found in a small object with enormous significance: the Cyrus cylinder. Created in 539 BCE during the reign of Cyrus the Great. The inscription on this clay cylinder is often regarded as the world's first declaration of human rights. It speaks of religious freedom and respect for different cultures, ideas that the modern world would only begin to formally articulate thousands of years later. In that moment, a powerful idea took root in the Persian world: that the strength of a civilization does not lie only in conquest, but in the ability to embrace diversity. Because of this, Iran is not simply a country to observe on a map. It is more like a living lesson stretching across millennia, a story about how human societies survive, adapt, and renew themselves under some of the most difficult conditions imaginable. One clear example of that spirit can be found on Hormuz Island in the Persian Gulf. The island has almost no fresh water and is largely formed from salt and ancient rock. Yet beneath its surface lies an astonishing geological treasure: more than 70 different minerals. What makes Hormuz unique is not only the resources themselves, but the way the local people have woven geology into culture. A deep red soil known as golak is even used as a seasoning in certain traditional dishes. On Hormuz, the land is not just the ground people walk on. It becomes part of the flavor of life itself. Farther inland, in the deserts of central Iran, the city of Yazd tells another story of human ingenuity. From a distance, Yazd appears as a maze of sand-colored buildings made from mud brick. At first glance, the material might seem fragile, yet it has proven remarkably durable in the desert climate. But the most brilliant innovation of ancient Iranians lies hidden beneath the ground. More than 2,000 years ago, engineers developed a system known as Qanats, long underground tunnels that carried water from mountain aquifers to distant desert settlements. It was not a victory over nature. It was a negotiation with nature, built on a deep understanding of the environment. Above the rooftops of Yazd stand tall structures called badgirs, or wind catchers. These towers function as ancient natural air conditioning systems. They capture cooler air from above and channel it downward into homes while pushing warm air out. Long before the modern world spoke about sustainable architecture, people here were already living it. If Yazd represents survival, then Isfahan represents beauty. Persians once said, "Isfahan is half the world." At the heart of the city stands the Shah Mosque, a masterpiece where mathematics, art, and spirituality come together. Its enormous dome was built according to precise geometric proportions. Stand beneath the center of the dome and clap your hands, and the sound echoes multiple times, as if the architecture itself were participating in prayer. Not far away lies the Armenian quarter, where Christian churches have stood for centuries. Within the Persian Empire, different religious communities were not only allowed to exist side by side, they were often encouraged to contribute to the prosperity of the wider society. To the south, the city of Shiraz tells yet another story, one of light and poetry. Early in the morning, sunlight passes through the colorful stained glass of the Nasir al-Mulk Mosque, transforming the floor into a river of color. Here, light is more than a physical phenomenon. It feels like a poem written in glass and sunlight. This aesthetic philosophy also appears in the famous Persian garden tradition. The design known as Chahar Bagh divides a garden into 4 symmetrical sections, symbolizing the vision of paradise in Persian culture. In the middle of a dry desert landscape, these gardens created spaces of perfect balance, where water, plants, and architecture formed peaceful oases. In southwestern Iran, the ruins of Persepolis still stand after more than 2.5 millennia. On its stone reliefs, representatives from 23 different nations are shown approaching the Persian king. There are no images of war or conquest. Instead, they carry gifts, symbols of a vast empire built on recognition of diversity. Yet Iran's history is not written only in moments of glory. In 2003, a devastating earthquake destroyed much of the ancient city of Bam, once home to the largest mud brick fortress in the world. From the rubble, reconstruction slowly began. Many of the original bricks were collected and reused. It was not just about rebuilding a structure. It was about restoring memory. That same spirit appears in the art of Persian carpets. Each carpet is like a woven map of symbols, stories, and history. But traditional artisans often intentionally include a small imperfection in the pattern, not because they lack the skill to create perfection, but because, in Persian philosophy, perfection belongs only to the divine. Today, the modern heart of Iran beats in Tehran, a vast city resting beneath the towering Alborz Mountains. The city's social geography sometimes mirrors its physical landscape. The higher neighborhoods near the mountains are cooler and often wealthier. Inside the Golestan Palace, a decorative technique using countless mirrored fragments scatters light into thousands of tiny reflections. A single beam becomes an entire universe of shimmering points, much like Iranian culture itself, reflecting many influences across centuries. Not far from Tehran lies the village of Kandavan, where homes are carved directly into volcanic rock formations that resemble giant beehives. These structures naturally regulate temperature, remaining cool in summer and warm in winter. Remarkably, people have lived in these rock homes for more than 700 years. In daily life, another unique cultural tradition shapes social interactions. Ta'aruf. This elaborate system of etiquette involves polite offers, refusals, and gestures of hospitality expressed through multiple layers of meaning. To outsiders, Taarruf can feel like a complicated social dance. But within Iranian society, it acts as a soft social cushion, helping relationships function smoothly even during difficult times. Even Iranian cuisine reflects this philosophy. Two of its most distinctive flavors are saffron and rose, in a landscape often defined by dryness and dust. Iranian culture has learned to elevate fragrance and subtlety. Food is not only about nourishment, it becomes an experience of aroma, color, and balance. In northern Iran, the village of Masule offers another remarkable example of communal design. Here, the roof of one house serves as the pathway for the house above it. There are few fences or rigid separations. The entire village functions like a social agreement built from a stone and brick, relying on deep trust among neighbors. Yet Iran in the 21st century faces new challenges. Climate change has begun to dry many rivers, including the Zayandeh Rud, which once sustained the city of Isfahan. Younger generations must also navigate economic pressures and an uncertain future. Still, if history has taught anything about Iran, it is the extraordinary ability of its people to adapt. Over thousands of years, this land has endured wars, earthquakes, environmental change, and political upheaval. Its civilization has survived not because nature was generous or history was stable, but because its people learned how to live with uncertainty. Today, as the modern world begins confronting its own era of instability, from climate disruption to global tensions, the lessons embedded in Iran's long story feel more relevant than ever. In this land of stone, fire, and desert winds, generations of people learned how to transform hardship into creativity and adversity into culture. Iran, then, is not a finished chapter in history. It is more like an eternal flame in an ancient sanctuary, always burning, always changing, yet never extinguished. Iran is not the end of a story. It is a continuous rebirth, a beginning that history is still writing. And perhaps the most remarkable thing about Iran is not what it has been, but what it continues to become. Because unlike many ancient civilizations that now exist only in ruins or museum displays, Iran is still alive with the same cultural DNA that shaped its past. The ideas, traditions, and ways of thinking that once guided emperors, poets, and engineers have not disappeared. They have simply adapted, quietly evolving within modern life. Walk through a busy street in Tehran today, and you will see something striking. Beneath the fast pace of traffic, smartphones, and modern fashion, there is still a deep rhythm of continuity. A shopkeeper carefully arranging saffron in glass jars. A family gathering in the evening over tea, speaking in poetry as naturally as conversation. A craftsman working on patterns that have existed for centuries, yet never feel outdated. In Iran, the past does not feel distant. It feels present. This continuity becomes even more powerful when you look at the role of poetry in everyday life. In many parts of the world, poetry is something studied in classrooms or reserved for special occasions. But in Iran, poetry lives in daily conversation. Lines from poets like Hafez or Rumi are quoted casually, not as decoration, but as a way of expressing emotion, philosophy, and even humor. It is as if language itself carries memory, and that memory shapes how people see the world. There is a certain patience in Iranian culture, a long-view perspective that comes from living in a land where history stretches back thousands of years. When you are part of a civilization that has already endured so much, the present moment, no matter how uncertain, feels like just one chapter in a much longer story. That perspective can be difficult to fully understand from the outside, because much of the modern narrative surrounding Iran is built on immediacy, breaking news, political shifts, and short-term events. These are important, of course, but they often overshadow the deeper reality that Iran operates on a timescale that few modern nations can truly relate to. Empires have risen and fallen on this land. Borders have shifted, languages have evolved. Yet something essential has remained: a way of thinking, a way of adapting, a way of finding beauty even in limitation. You see it in the way water is treated, not as something abundant, but as something precious and sacred. You see it in architecture that does not try to dominate nature, but instead works with it. You see it in social customs like Tara, where politeness becomes an art form, smoothing over friction in ways that feel almost invisible. These are not random cultural traits. They are survival strategies, refined over centuries. And in a world that is increasingly facing its own limits of resources, stability, and certainty, these strategies begin to feel less like relics of the past and more like lessons for the future. Consider the challenge of climate change. Many regions today are struggling to adapt to rising temperatures, water scarcity, and environmental stress. Yet, for thousands of years, much of Iran has existed under those exact conditions. Its architecture, its agriculture, even its social systems were designed with scarcity in mind. The Qanats, the wind catchers, the desert gardens. These are not just historical curiosities. They are examples of sustainable thinking long before sustainability became a global concern. Or consider the idea of cultural diversity. In an age where many societies are grappling with questions of identity and coexistence, the Persian Empire once managed to bring together dozens of different cultures, languages, and religions under a single system, not by erasing differences, but by recognizing them. That idea, first symbolically expressed in the Cyrus cylinder, still echoes today. It suggests that strength does not come from uniformity, but from balance. And perhaps that is the deeper thread connecting everything you've seen. From Hormuz Island to Yazd, from Isfahan to Shiraz, from ancient ruins to modern cities. Balance between harsh nature and human creativity, between tradition and change, between individuality and community. Iran has never been an easy place to live. Its geography alone ensures that. But instead of resisting difficulty, its civilization learned how to shape it, how to turn constraints into structure and limitations into identity. That is why, even after thousands of years, Iran does not feel like a civilization that simply survived. It feels like one that learned and continues to learn. There is a quiet resilience in that idea. Not the kind of resilience that makes headlines, but the kind that unfolds slowly, generation after generation. The kind that rebuilds cities after earthquakes. The kind that preserves art through centuries of upheaval. The kind that keeps culture alive even when everything around it changes. It is easy, from a distance, to see Iran as a place defined by its challenges. But when you look closer, those challenges are only part of the story. The deeper story is about response, how people respond to scarcity, how they respond to uncertainty, how they respond to time itself. Because time in Iran is not just something that passes. It accumulates, it layers, it builds meaning. Every brick in a mud city, every tile in a mosque, every thread in a carpet carries a piece of that accumulated time. And together, They form something that cannot be easily reduced to headlines or simplified narratives. They form a living civilization. And perhaps that is the most important thing to understand. Iran is not just a place where history happened. It is a place where history is still happening. Quietly, continuously, in ways that are not always visible from the outside. It is a reminder that civilizations are not defined only by their moments of power, but by their ability to endure, to adapt, and to remain meaningful across time. So when we look at Iran today, we are not just looking at a country in the present. We are looking at thousands of years of human experience, still unfolding, still evolving, still alive. And in that sense, Iran is not just part of the world. It is a reflection of it, a reflection of how humanity struggles, creates, and survives. A reflection of how, even in the most difficult conditions, people continue to build beauty, meaning, and connection. And maybe that is why Iran continues to captivate those who look beyond the surface. Because it does not offer simple answers. It offers something far more valuable. Perspective. A reminder that history is not a straight line, that progress is not always visible, and that even in a world full of uncertainty, there are places where the flame of human creativity has never gone out. Iran is one of those places, and its story is still being written.